Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here today, which I bet you guys get sick of hearing, but I do the best I can. Safi it has been working on seeing more movies. She actually has seen 2 movies which we will be doing individual reviews on together. And so yeah, and then she'll do all of her lists, but I want to get videos out there just so you guys don't think we're dead or anything. But anyways, this video is going to be my top 10 old movies I watched in 2019, the top 10 best. And by old movie, I want to clarify, I mean 2018 or older. When you watch an older movie in the year that you're currently on, it counts as a quote old movie. I know that might be a little confusing to people, but whatever. It's fun. But the reason why I had so much trouble uploading the last video is because the app in which I edit all of our videos on, called Filmmaker Pro, for 2020, they did this retarded shit. They made it so that you can only use, quote, 3 layers, which basically means I can have the 1 layer in the background, and then I can have 2 more. And if you do more than that, they won't let you upload and download your own video that you made and it's all yours. They won't let you do that. And so what I'm going to have to start doing is shoot these videos like these lists and segments of 3 things. And so if you guys are confused why the video has a couple of cuts here and there, it's not my choice. It's because they decided to become money-grubbing, hustling, Shylocks like Adam Sandler and Uncut Gems. I mean, if they were, I mean, I could legitimately see them being Shylock, because that's what they did for 2020. In 2019, I had no problem using the unlimited amount of layers, and then they decided, fuck you, for using our app for an entire year and making a successful YouTube channel. We're going to try to fuck you, because we're a bunch of Shylocks at Filmmaker Pro. And so, yeah, that just in case you're wondering. So with my honorable mentions, I'm going to put them all up at once instead of revealing them one by one. And so I'm going to say about 1 sentence about each of them so that this doesn't go on for an hour, even though it could easily. I mean, I could talk for hours and hours without stopping or taking breaks. It's really easy for me. So first off, I'm going to go through my honorable mentions, and I've got quite a few of them. Because, to be honest, I didn't watch a whole lot of bad movies this year. I watched about like 20 or so bad movies, and then the rest out of the 50 were great movies. So like 30 good movies and 20 bad movies. That's a good mix. So first off, My Friend Dahmer. I think that this is one of the best serial killer movies ever, but it's not really a movie that I would want to watch over and over again. I really like how it delves into a lot of conspiratorial aspects of the Dahmer case, such as how he's able to have connections into the White House so that he can get, I mean, he's a high school student, he's able to get connections to get inside the White House and meet the Vice President of the United States. That's real. That's been recorded. It's all based on fact, and so I love that movie. But it's just not a movie you want to watch over and over. Next, Christmas Chronicles. This movie is an okay movie. Basically, it's Adventures in Babysitting meets Christmas, and which I think is a good idea. I said this in the review that they should have made sequels with like different gimmicks, like Adventures in Babysitting at Christmas. And basically, the best thing about this movie is Kurt Russell. Everything else is kind of meh. It's a meh movie at best. And then next, Swingers. I thought that this movie was very amateur. It was very film student quality. There were lots of film references, like they're trying to be Tarantino. There's lots of film posters. But I really love Jon Favreau in this movie. I love the dynamic between him and Vince Vaughn. But it's just kind of stale. I mean, I don't think I'd ever watch this movie again. It was kind of a boring affair, which is a weird thing. A boring affair. That's weird. But next, Ghoulies. I thought, you know what I thought about this already. It's just okay. It's not as bad as Safi makes it out to be, but it's not great like everyone else makes it out to be. And then next, my second Spike Lee movie, He Got Game. This movie was very mediocre. It was very pretentious. I liked the plot, though. I thought it was a very interesting plot. I loved Denzel Washington's performance. I thought, though, there were some very stupid and dumb and odd editing choices. I thought that there was some really unnecessary fluff and filler here and there. I thought that there could have been some writing improvements as the movie went on, but I loved stuff in this movie, but I don't think I'll ever watch it again as well, unless I get a girlfriend who wants to watch the movie, because I would never watch this movie for a group of friends, or anyone else, except for a girlfriend. The next movie, Dracula in the Provinces. This is an Italian vampire movie, and I like this movie a lot. I think that it's interesting, it's unique, it's different. It's got some funny stuff in it. It's got some creepy / kind of gross moments. Like there's this moment where it's a factory accident and it's just blood everywhere, and the main guy, he's a vampire now, and he is just so gross and creepy. But the movie is kind of stale. Once again, it's just, it could have been better, a lot better. The ending is kind of trash. I do think the best part is when they're partying in the castle in the party scene and everything, and it's just very fun. I would highly recommend you check this movie out on YouTube, because you cannot get this movie anywhere else. It's out of print. You cannot get this movie except for YouTube. Next, Dawn of the Dead original. I thought this movie's pretty good. It's kind of overrated. It's hard to tell how much time passes, but there was a lot of cool stuff. I love the music. I love the part at the end where the main guy, he decides not to commit suicide, and he jumps to the rescue, and he escapes with all the rest. He escapes with the girl, and I thought that was great. But otherwise, it's good. It's good. There's nothing wrong with that if the movie's not great or bad, as long as it's good. Next up, Ghoulies 3. I bet you guys are very shocked this movie's so high. But I really enjoyed this movie for what it was. But that being said, as a Ghoulies movie, it's kind of trash. And I think that there's a balance to that, of me being able to say, I enjoyed this movie, but then me also being able to say, it's terrible in the Ghoulies series. And so it would have been probably near the top 10, though, if it was better in terms of being a Ghoulies movie. Next up is Hudson Hawk. I thought this movie was a fun movie. Very, very fun. And I thought that there was some great funny moments, like the part where he kicks the dog, and the dog is basically the last bad guy in the whole place, and that was so hilarious. That was so funny. I love that. But I thought that this movie was kind of a failure in terms of the main point of this movie was them doing heists and singing while they would do the heists. And I thought that was lost, because then the friend, he disappears, and so basically there's no more singing the rest of the movie, and I thought that was terrible. That's what I wanted to see. It's basically like in Guardians of the Galaxy, like when he has the cassette and he plays music while he does stuff. It's basically like that, and it's unfortunate. Again, another okay. Kujo. Ugh. This movie's so disappointing. It's boring, but it's got some great stuff in it. I love Dee Wallace in it. I think that overall, though, it's very mediocre. Next up, Batman and the Two-Face. I mean, Batman vs. Two-Face. I love this movie. I love it. I thought that it was everything the first movie should have been. I thought it was a great send-off for Batman. Spoiler alert, it ends with Catwoman buying Bruce Wayne to marry him in an auction. And I thought that's fun. That's fun. It's a great send-off. I loved Two-Face in this movie. It was a great movie. I'm not really a fan of the 60s Batman, but this movie made me kind of a fan. Next up, The Dead Zone. Already talked about this. The performance was good, but it was very dark, depressing. I did not like the villain. I thought it was very, very messy. It was more like a book than a movie. It was not really consistent. There was no consistent plot, except for the guy has powers, but even that's really not consistent. Next up is Pet Shop. I think that this is a very fun sort of kids movie. I think that there's some great acting performances. I think that there's some great creature effects. I think the villains are kind of creepy, but it's kind of a letdown as it goes on. You can tell they don't have any money because they basically do nothing with the creatures. The aliens don't do anything because the aliens are these pets, and they don't really do anything. But overall, I would highly recommend this movie. It's very fun. It's a kids movie. I mean, come on. Next up, American Beauty. I can totally understand why this won Best Picture. Again, with Safi's weird, abnormal tastes, she said this movie sucks because of the roses scene. I do think that scene was very pretentious and stupid. I hated that scene. But I love it. I love this movie. I think it's a great movie. It's just not something I'd watch again. Next up, Lolita. I'm going to save this for another video some other time where I review this movie in depth. Let's just say it has the greatest opening scene in a movie of all time. I love it. I love the movie, but it's not really one I watch a lot more. But I love it. It's fantastic. A+ type of material. Spaghetti and meatballs. Next up, The Aviator. This was a great movie, but it was kind of a letdown. I didn't really like how it just focused on one portion of his life. I thought that Leonardo DiCaprio was very mediocre, and he was just being Leonardo DiCaprio as usual. But I still really liked the movie. I really liked the directing, the colors, some great stuff in it, all around. Next up, The Stand. I really like this movie. It's fun. It's got some great stuff. I love Rob Lowe in it. I loved the villain, probably one of the greatest villains of all time. But there's some really garbage stuff in here. In the third part, I was so close to just saying, you know what, this movie, I can't watch it anymore because it's like hours and hours of my time. But then the last hour completely makes up for everything. Next up, The Master. This is a good art house movie. This is probably the best example of a good art house movie. I thought that Joaquin Phoenix, this is his best performance. I thought that Philip Seymour Hoffman was great in it. But I thought the movie's flaws were in that it's an art house movie. Art house movies, they're really pretentious. They don't really offer anything besides powerful scenes here and there. They don't really offer good plots, good character arcs, because the characters in this movie, they never change. That's the point of the movie, is that this Joaquin Phoenix guy, he's all over the place, and he's just never going to fit into this cult. And so then he just leaves, and Philip Seymour Hoffman is the same as usual. I mean, there's no arcs or anything, but it's really good. Next up, Peeping Tom. You guys know what I thought. I love it. I love it. It's a classic movie. So close to being my top 10. Next up, The Vampire Doll. Ooh, I love this movie. It's like a Hammer Japanese movie. If Japanese people really loved Hammer and made their own Hammer Dracula horror movie, this is epic. It's so creepy. It's got fantastic music, great acting, a really sexy main actress, actually, to be honest. I mean, that's one of the main things I took from the movie. So, and then I love the plot, I love the ending, I love everything about the movie, but it just could not crack my top 10. Next up, ReAnimator. This movie was a classic. It had a lot of great stuff to it, but there are some disappointing elements that stop it from being in my top 10. I thought that everything pays off in the last scene, but other than that, it's just it's good. It's really good, but it's not good enough to be in the top 10. And so now finally, my top 10 old movies of 2019. Number 10, Silver Bullet. This movie was good. It was good. It was a good horror movie. It was a good Halloween-y movie. That sounds funny. Halloween-y. I love the main actors. I love the sister. I love the brother. I love the uncle. It's just a great cast and a great it's so fun. It's so 80s. It's a great werewolf movie. I don't really like werewolf movies, but this kind of proved me wrong. The villain was really badass and evil. Like, he's a scary effing villain, I'll tell you. And so, yeah. My number 9 is The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. This movie was so shockingly good. I love this movie to death. I wish I could put it higher. I wish I could. Because it's got such great writing. And I'll tell you, the writing will work wonders for a movie that isn't that good in other ways. But then this movie, it has a fantastic performance by the main actor. Even though he has the stupid fake beard on his face for when he's Dr. Jekyll. It's got Christopher Lee doing a performance better than any other movie he's ever been in. It's an epic movie. It's so underrated. No one even talks about this movie. And it's so deep. It's so intricate. And at heart, it's more of a revenge movie. This guy, this doctor, this really nerdy doctor who he gets used by everyone. And he finally, he makes this potion for himself. And it turns him into, basically it's like, it turns him into this gentleman. And he gets back at everyone. And it's pretty epic. And the ending is great too. Because actually we never did the video, but I wrote a sequel of if Dr. Jekyll did a crossover with Frankenstein, and it was a sequel to both Curse and this one, and it's good. And next up, my number 8 is Saving Mr. Banks. What? Saving Mr. Banks? Margot likes that type of movie? I love biopic movies. This movie, it was such a shock how good this was. Such a shock because Tom Hanks as Walt Disney, he gave an incredible performance, and he's Walt Disney's cousin. And regardless of what I think of him as a human being, I thought that he did a phenomenal job. I thought that Emma Thompson, is that her name? Yeah, she did a fantastic job. I thought it was such a great movie of just these two going at each other and trying to get things from one another. She is trying to get a movie that's more faithful to her, I guess, really, really dark, bad, it's just glass half empty type of books, and he's trying to make it Disney, and he's trying to get, he's trying to make Mary Poppins, and so it's just that back and forth between them, and the speech where Tom Hanks talked about his childhood growing up, about how he had a hard childhood too, and how he went through all this stuff too. That was epic. And just so many, I'm getting chills, so many great things about this movie. Next up, my number 7 is After Hours. Martin Scorsese's After Hours. This movie was such a shock of how good it was. I love those type of movies where you don't expect it to be good, or at least you're not expecting anything of it. Like it's not good or bad. And this movie, it's hard. Last year was an After Hours type of year, the whole entire year, and it was very identifiable the way that everything happened in this movie. It was very, very interesting and weird. It was nightmarish. It was creepy. It was comedic in some weird places. It had some good horror elements, some good comedy elements. The main acting is great. The directing is great. It's a great little movie. It's a great little small movie. It's a great New York movie. This movie made me want to go to New York and just walk around at night and walk into these different places like he does, and just discover these different types of people, these characters. The one issue I have with this movie is the ending. The ending is a huge letdown. Nothing really happens. It's just kind of and Scorsese even said that he had a lot of trouble with the ending. He went to 10 different directors to get consulting to what he should do, and this is the ending he came up with. It's kind of trash. It really is trash, but the rest of the movie was great. And I think that if you watch this movie, the number one thing I would recommend is for you to watch it at night. Stay up until midnight, and then right at midnight turn this movie on. And it will be the greatest. This has been one of the greatest movie viewing experiences I've ever had. That's how great of an experience I was when I saw this movie. Number 6, The Founder. Woo! God, this was another surprising movie, another surprising masterpiece, I would even say. Michael Keaton gives a great performance, not as good as Walt Disney in Saving Mr. Banks, but the overall plot, the overall script was better. I thought that this movie was a lot more energetic and exciting. I loved the colors. I loved how this crappy salesman, he walks into this great little business and he turns it into, McDonald's. And he just, the way that he manipulates people, and there's this reveal at the end where there's a certain character who's revealed to now be his wife, and it's so, such an incredible moment. So many great moments in this movie. Such a great biopic. I wish I would have seen this in theaters, because people really talked down to this movie. They said, it's just a movie about people eating burgers. Completely false. My number 5 is Mission Impossible Fallout. This movie is probably one of the greatest action movies I've ever seen. It was such a fresh and exciting and invigorating action movie. I love the plot. I loved Tom Cruise, which is something I don't say very often, by the way. I loved Henry Cavill. The only people I didn't love were Simon Pegg and then Rebecca Ferguson. They were trash in this movie. But yeah, I really liked this movie a lot. This movie gave me faith in the action genre more than any other action movie in the past couple of years. Well, except for one other one that's coming up. And overall, it was very exciting from beginning to end. The music, too. This has the best soundtrack of 2018, I believe, except for Bad Times at the El Royale. My number 4 is Some Kind of Wonderful. Talk about surprises. This is a John Hughes movie. Talk about underrated, too. It's a John Hughes masterpiece. It's basically about this guy who's deciding between a tomboy, probably one of the sexiest tomboys I've ever seen on screen, played by Mary Stuart Masterson, and then also Leah Thompson from Back to the Future. And they're two different types of girls, and it's not really, that sounds really girly, what I just described. It is not a girly movie. It's a funny movie. It's a great comedy. It's a interesting high school movie. It's a different perspective. There's a part in the movie where he's just taking this really popular girl in the Back to the Future girl. He's taking her around the town, and she's saying, why are you treating me so special? Why are you taking me to this fancy 5-star restaurant? I've never even been here. I don't like this food even. And, like, you don't know anything about me. And it's really cool because that's different. We never see that in these types of movies. Never. And it's just such a great movie. I can't say enough good things about it, but I'm just going to move on. Because, it's great. I recommend seeing it. And my number 3 is Ghoulies 2. This is another surprising movie. So many great things to say about it. I thought that it had a great cast of characters that you could identify with, characters that you really cared for, and that you really wanted to succeed, and they were really down on their luck. It has very good writing too. It's the same writer from the ReAnimator, which tells you how good it is, and it's so good. It's got some great, fun, cheap 80s effects that look really, really good. It's got some great kills, but they're kind of let down because they don't show very much blood. It's got a great villain in the head of the park who's threatening to shut them down, and it's epic, and it's really satisfying too. It gives you that satisfying feeling, especially after you see the cover with the Ghoulies in the toilet. I won't say anything more, but epic movie. My number 2, this movie, once again, it is not number 2, but it's the second movie in the top 10 list, John Wick Chapter 2. To start off, I am not a fan of the first John Wick at all. I think that it's trash. I think that the action is very manipulated. It's very fake looking. It's just kind of like going through the motions. But this sequel, it was so good. The plot is probably the best action movie plot I've ever seen. This is some of the best action that I've ever seen. It has great music. It has some great villains. There's multiple villains that are kind of like doing different things, and it's like he cannot win. And at the end, it's a very dark and sort of this ending gave me chills when they basically make it so that from now on everyone is going to be out to kill him. And it's this moment where he's walking down the street and he just, like, every single person is just looking at him ready to kill him. And then he's like, uh-oh. And he starts running and he starts, like, jogging, really. And it's so good. I can't say enough good things. This movie is so good that stupid, ugly, feminist lesbo, Ruby Rose, even she is good in this movie. She's a great villain, and she gave a great performance. If I didn't know anything else about her, I would say watch out for her because she's a great actress in this movie. I think that the weakest part was Common. Common played one of the bad guys, and he didn't do that much of a good job. I thought that his ending, it was kind of trash. It was kind of like, okay, like where does he go from here? Like, it wasn't very satisfying with him, but everything else made up for that. So yeah, John Wick Chapter 2, fantastic. I hope that maybe I can review it one day, but who knows. My number one movie of 2019, old movies that is Thinner. This might shock people to their very core. It shocks me to my very core. I never would have expected this to be my number one, but it has such a fantastic plot. It has such a fantastic writing, directing, everything. The soundtrack, the score, it's pretty good. But this movie is just so satisfying all around about this guy who does the wrong thing. He's really fat, and this gypsy curses him by saying thinner, and then he can't stop losing weight, and it's horrifying to look at. It's a horror movie too. It's not like a fake modern horror movie. It came out in 1996, which was really surprising. It has some of the best moments in a horror movie I've ever seen. Some of the most satisfying moments, like at the end. I won't say it, but the ending is one of the greatest endings of all time in movie history. I thought also that this has probably the greatest best friend. It's the best friend played by this guy who's on Joe Mantegna. He did an epic job. He was this mafia guy, and he would just like do anything for the main character. And these gypsies, they're evil in this movie and in real life too. And this guy, he does anything he can, and does so many different cool things. At one point he's like poisoning dogs. He's setting things on fire. It's so fun. It's so cool. This movie is the perfect example of a Stephen King movie, of where you have the great stuff that Stephen King did in the written work, and then you have Tom Holland, an epic director and an epic person. I've met him in real life, and he takes that stuff, put it together, and you get epicness. This movie, I highly recommend it. Although I would say go in just thinking it'll be okay. Don't go in this movie overhyped or anything, because that might make you not like it as much. A lot of times with movies, when I don't have any expectations, it's always the best viewing experience. But yeah, I can't say, I know it sounds weird, I can't say enough good things about Thinner, but I can say that it will permanently be remembered by me. And that is a great honor for the people who made this movie I mean, it's just a little horror movie. It's just a little horror movie made by Stephen King. And it'll always be remembered by me. And it will always be treasured by me. I will always watch it probably every year around Halloween. I'll put on Thinner. And so, yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Next up, I'll try to get Safi to do her top 10 worst, top 10 best old movies. So, goodbye, everyone. See you soon.